Your grandfather owed us $2 million. Lena kept her hands steady. She'd been repairing a watch when they walked in, 3 of them. They locked the door behind themselves. He's dead, she said. You're 3 days late. We know he's dead. The Korean one didn't blink. That's why we're here. The debt didn't die with him. I don't have $2 million. No, he agreed. You don't. And then the old one with the cane said the sentence that ended her life as she knew it. You have something better. You have you. 3 rival syndicates, 1 debt, and 3 men who couldn't agree on who owned her, so they decided to share. Who was her grandfather, really? What did he do to owe 3 families at once? And what did the old watchmaker hide inside that pocket watch before he died? Stay to the very end. Because 90 days from now, the Collateral will be holding all the keys. Before we begin, if this story pulls you in, leave a like and drop the city you're watching from in the comments. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Now, let's step inside that shop. Lena Voss fixed broken things. That was the whole of her life, and she'd never wanted more of it. She worked in a shop that smelled of oil and brass. She knew every gear in a movement by touch. She could hear a watch running 4 seconds slow from across the room. Her grandfather taught her. He was a strange, quiet, careful man. He never talked about the past. He never explained the money that sometimes appeared, and she never asked. That was the deal they never spoke out loud. He died on a Tuesday. Heart, they said. Lena buried him on Friday. She opened the shop again on Monday, because grief is expensive and rent isn't. 3 nights later, the headlights came. The bell over the door rang. Then it was turned, then locked. She looked up. 3 men. They did not look at each other. They looked at her. The first was tall and Korean, in a charcoal overcoat that cost more than her shop. Tattoos ran up his neck, out of his collar. He looked less like a criminal and more like a man who signed things and people disappeared. The second was broad, leather jacket, broken nose, ink everywhere. He looked at her the way you look at a chore. The third was older, silver, elegant. A silver-tipped cane he clearly didn't need. Lena Voss, the old one said, we're closed. You're not, he said, you're open. You just don't know what business you're in yet. Your grandfather owed my organization $800,000, Taesung said. Surgical, no warmth. He owed Rourke's people 6. He owed Silas 6. He borrowed from all 3 of us, separately. He told each of us we were the only one. That's not possible, Lena said. He fixed watches. Rourke laughed once, ugly. He laundered, for 20 years, through the shop. You never wondered why an old man with no customers kept the lights on. She had. She'd never asked. Now she understood what her silence had cost. I don't have $2 million, she said. No, Taesung agreed. You don't. Then what do you want? Silas set both hands on the head of his cane. Normally, he said pleasantly, this ends with a body. But the 3 of us met tonight to determine who has the claim on his estate, and we could not agree. He smiled. So we compromised. On what? On you. She didn't scream. Screaming was for people who thought someone was coming. She looked at the 3 men in her grandfather's shop. She looked at the bench, the half-fixed watch, the tiny gears laid out in perfect order. So I'm Collateral, she said. You're an asset, Silas corrected. That's the same word in a nicer coat. Rourke snorted. Tyson's eyes narrowed. The first real reaction she'd gotten out of him. Terms, Lena said. Excuse me. You're businessmen. You didn't shoot me. You drove across the city and had a meeting about me. That means I'm worth something to you. She untied her apron, folded it, set it down. So tell me the terms. What's the interest rate on my life? The 3 most dangerous men in the city looked at each other. Nobody had briefed them on this. Then Lena picked up the last thing on the bench. Her grandfather's pocket watch, the one he never let her open. She put it in her pocket. She didn't know yet that she'd just picked up the only weapon in the room. They took her to a fortress on the cliffs. Iron gates. Dogs. Men with rifles walking a perimeter in the rain. Her room was bigger than the shop. Silk sheets. A balcony over the sea. They gave her clothes she hated. Expensive. Neutral. Someone else's taste. The first night. Its night. She didn't sleep. She sat on the floor with her back to the door and took her grandfather's watch apart on the carpet, piece by piece, because it was the only thing in the world that still made sense. That's when she found it. Inside the case, behind the movement where a balance wheel should have sat. A key, tiny, brass, not a watch part. Her grandfather had built a hiding place into a watch and handed it to her without a word. They gave her work. That was Tae-sung's idea. He put her in the library with a laptop and 20 years of the family's legitimate ledgers. He was testing her. She knew it. She did the work anyway. 3 days in, he came in without knocking. "You flagged nothing," he said. "You didn't ask me to flag anything. You found something." Lena turned the laptop around. "Someone's skimming your shipping company. 3%. Same routing number. 4 quarters running. It's lazy work." She met his eyes. "I'm not your auditor, Mr. Han. I'm your hostage. You want me to plug the holes in your empire, you start paying down my debt." Tae-sung stared at her a long, cold moment. 20,000, he said, off the principal. 50. 30. Done. He walked to the door, stopped. "You are not what we agreed to take," he said, and left. She found Rourke hitting a heavy bag under a glass pavilion. Shirtless, tattoos everywhere. Every strike sounded like a car door slamming. "Keep walking, watch girl," he said, not stopping. Was planning to. He stopped. He caught the bag. He looked at her. "You think you're clever, doing sums with Han, making yourself useful." "I'm making myself expensive," Lena said. "There's a difference. Useful things get used. Expensive things get protected." Rourke crossed the grass in 3 strides. He got close. He was very large, and he wanted her to notice. "You don't make terms with us." "Then hit me," she said. Flat, bored, almost. "Or move." He searched her face for fear. He didn't find any. What he found was worse. A hollowed-out anger that looked a great deal like his own. His jaw worked. He stepped back like he'd touched a stove. "Stay out of the garden," he muttered and walked away. Lena let out the breath she'd been holding for the last 10 seconds. They ate at a table built for 20. Silas at the head, Tae-sung and Rourke on either side. Lena at the far end, alone, like a punctuation mark. "She's adequate," Tae-sung said, not looking at her. "She's a headache," said Rourke. "I'm right here," Lena said. Silas set down his knife. The room went quiet. Even Rourke stopped chewing. "You are alive because we permit it," Silas said, gently, which made it worse. "You sleep warm because we provide it. Do not confuse our patience with weakness." "I just want to know when it ends," she said. "A year? 10? The debt ends when we say it ends." "That's not a debt," Lena said quietly. "That's a leash." Silas smiled and picked up his knife again. "Now you're learning the business." That night, alone in her room, Lena took out the tiny brass key. She turned it over in her fingers. Somewhere out there was a lock that fitted, and her grandfather had died, making sure she'd be the one holding it. It took her 6 weeks to find it. She wasn't allowed off the estate. So she did what she did best. She read the machine. Her grandfather's shop had a floor safe. She'd known about it since she was 12. He said it held spare movements. She'd never once seen him open it. She needed to get back to that shop. She needed a reason. So she made one. She told Tae-sung there were paper records at the shop. 20 years of her grandfather's real books, the ones that would show every family he'd laundered for, and how much. It was true. She just didn't tell him the rest. Tae-sung drove her himself. Rourke came, because Rourke didn't trust anyone. Silas stayed home. Silas always stayed home. The shop smelled the same. Oil, brass, dust. Lena stood in the middle of it and had to hold the workbench for a second. Sentiment, Tae-sung observed. Grief, she corrected. You should try it sometime. Builds character. Rourke barked a laugh. Tae-sung's mouth did something that was almost nearly, not quite a smile. She knelt. She pulled back the rug. The floor safe was there, exactly where a 12-year-old girl had watched an old man pretend it didn't exist. The brass key fit. Inside, no spare movements, a single ledger bound in black, and beneath it, 30 years of photographs, receipts, and recordings. Rourke leaned over her shoulder. What is that? Lena's hands had gone cold. It's everything, she said. He wrote down everything, every family, every job, everybody. She turned a page, and her own name jumped out at her. Her grandfather had not borrowed $2 million. Not the way they thought. He had been forced to. By a fourth man, Dante Marchetti, a smiling, soft-handed broker who had spent 20 years playing three families against each other, using an old watchmaker as the pipe all the money ran through. Marchetti took loans in the old man's name. From all three houses. Then he pocketed them, and when the old watchmaker finally said he was done, when he said he'd take the ledger to all three bosses and let them see what had been done to them, he died on a Tuesday. Heart, they said. Lena read it twice. Her hands were steady. That was the frightening part. They were completely steady. He didn't owe you, she said. He was robbed in your names, and then he was murdered for noticing. Tae-sung took the ledger from her hands. He read. He went very, very still. Marchetti sat at my table, he said quietly. 6 weeks ago. He sat at mine last month, Rourke said. His voice had gone strange, low. Lena stood up. Her grandfather's shop, her grandfather's ledger, her grandfather's blood. Then I have a business proposal, she said. They took the ledger to Silas. Lena laid it out on the table herself. She did not sit down. She stood in the way you stand when you're done being furniture. Here's what you three are actually holding, she said. 20 years of proof. Marchetti stole from all three of you. He set you against each other. And you were so busy watching each other that none of you looked at him. Silence. You brought me here as collateral on a debt that never existed, Lena said. So the debt is void. That's not mercy. That's arithmetic. Silas's pale eyes did not move from her. And what do you want, Miss Voss? Marchetti. That's ours. No, she said. He killed my grandfather. I get to be in the room. She put one finger on the ledger. And I want a third of everything you recover from him. In my name. In writing. Rourke let out a low whistle. Tae-sung's eyes darkened with something that was not anger. Silas smiled, slow and terrible. A quarter, 30%, Lena said. Done, said Silas, and tapped his cane once on the marble. They didn't hunt Marchetti. Lena wouldn't let them. You go at him with guns and he vanishes into a jurisdiction you can't reach, she said. He's not a soldier. He's a broker. So we take the only thing a broker has. Which is? Rourke asked. Credit. She worked 11 days on almost no sleep. She traced the shells. She matched the routing numbers to her grandfather's ledger. She found where Marchetti had parked 20 years of stolen money. And, more importantly, she found who else he owed. He's overextended, she told them. He's been borrowing from a cartel to cover the gaps. If they learn what he did to 3 families at once, they'll do it for us, Tae-sung finished. Lena closed the laptop. No, she said. They'll do it for me. He came into the kitchen at 2 a.m. with a split eyebrow and blood on his knuckles. Don't, Rourke said. Don't what? Look at me like I'm a dog that got hit by a car. Dogs usually know to stay out of traffic. Lena pulled down the first aid kit. Sit. He sat. She cleaned the cut. He flinched and caught her wrist, hard on reflex. Let go, Cormac. He did, slowly. He looked at his own hand like it had betrayed him. You should be putting a knife in me, he said, not patching me up. I thought about it, she said, taping the cut. But Han would add the cleaning bill to my principal. He laughed. It hurt him and he laughed anyway. He looked at her hands, then her mouth, then away. "Why don't you run?" he asked. "You could. You're smart enough." Lena threw the bloody gauze in the bin. "Because out there I'm nobody's problem," she said. "In here, I'm everybody's." Tae-sung found her on the balcony at dawn. She hadn't slept, neither had he. "You gave Rourke stitches," he said. "Jealous? Curious." He set a cup of coffee on the rail beside her. Black, exactly how she took it. She noticed that he'd noticed. "Your grandfather," he said. "I met him once, 15 years ago. He fixed my father's watch." A pause. "He refused payment. Said my father had already paid enough." Lena's throat closed. She looked out at the water. "He was kind," Tae-sung said. "In my world, that is a fatal condition." "And in yours?" she asked. "What's your fatal condition?" He was quiet, a long moment. "You," he said, and went back inside before she could answer. The meeting was set for a Thursday. Neutral ground. A restaurant Marchetti chose, which meant it wasn't neutral at all. Silas objected to one thing. "You don't go," he said to Lena. "He's never seen me. He thinks the watchmaker's granddaughter is a girl who fixes clocks." She pinned up her hair. "That's the whole point. Nobody watches the help." Rourke's jaw flexed. "And if it goes wrong, then you two do what you're good at," Lena said. "And I'll do what I'm good at." "Which is?" She picked up her grandfather's pocket watch and slid it into her pocket. Timing. Dante Marchetti was soft-handed, smiling, and expensive. He shook hands with all three bosses, like a man who had never once been afraid. Lena stood behind Tae-sung's shoulder with a leather folio, dressed like an assistant. Marchetti's eyes passed over her, the way eyes pass over furniture. That was his last mistake. "Gentlemen," Marchetti said, "you've each raised concerns about the Voss account. Understandable." The old man was sloppy at the end. "He wasn't sloppy," Lena said. Every head at the table turned. Marchetti blinked at her, annoyed, the way you'd be annoyed by a chair that spoke. "I'm sorry," he said. "And who?" "He wrote everything down," Lena said. "For 20 years. Every loan you took in his name. Every family you played against the others. Every account you moved it into." She set the folio on the table. "He was going to bring it to all three of them. That's why you killed him." The restaurant went very quiet. Marchetti's smile stayed on his face, but something behind it fell down. Marchetti had brought men. Of course he had. The first shot took out the chandelier. Glass came down like weather. Rourke went over the table. Tae-sung had Lena by the collar and behind a marble pillar before she understood she'd been moved. "Stay," he said. "Do not move, Tae-sung, Lena." It was the first time he'd used her name. Then he was gone into the noise. She crouched. She counted. Her hands shook, and her mind did not. 4 shooters. 2 on the mezzanine. 1 reloading. Rourke, out in the open, going for the mezzanine stairs. And a 4th man stepping out of the kitchen door behind him with a shotgun. And Rourke didn't see, and there was no time. No time at all. Lena moved. She grabbed the wine bottle off the table and threw it, not at the man, at the mirror behind him. It shattered. He flinched. He turned toward the noise, which meant he turned away from Rourke. 1 second. She'd bought 1 second. Rourke took it. That was all he'd ever needed. When it was over, the room was smoke and blood, and the sound of Lena's own heart. Rourke turned around and found her standing in the open, with a wine bottle's broken neck still in her fist, shaking so hard she couldn't set it down. "You stupid, stupid woman," he breathed, and pulled her against his chest, blood and all. Tae-sung crossed off the room. He looked at the shattered mirror, then at her. The cold mask was entirely gone. "You bought him a second," he said. "It was all he needed," Lena said. And then her legs went, and both men caught her. Marchetti tried to leave through the kitchen. Silas was standing in the kitchen. Silas had been standing there patiently since the first shot, because Silas had known exactly which door a coward would choose. He didn't kill him. He did something Marchetti found far worse. He handed him, alive and unmarked, to the cartel he'd been borrowing from, along with a copy of a certain black ledger and a very detailed accounting of exactly how much of their money he had never actually had. Poetic, Tae-sung said later. Efficient, said Silas. Cruel, said Lena. Silas smiled at her. Yes, he said. And you didn't object. She didn't. She thought about her grandfather, dead on a Tuesday. No, she said. I didn't. Here is what none of the three of them understood until it was already done. Lena hadn't asked for 30% of the recovery because she wanted money. She'd asked for it because Marchetti's stolen assets included the paper on every debt he'd bought up across the city, quietly for 20 years, using their money. When the recovery cleared, Lena Voss did not own a share of an empire. She owned the debts of every man at that table. She told them on a Thursday, at that same long dining table, standing where she'd once sat like punctuation. Rourke laughed until he had to sit down. Tae-sung read the papers twice, and then looked up at her with an expression she would remember for the rest of her life. Silas, old, patient, terrifying Silas, leaned back in his chair, tapped his cane once on the marble, and said the only thing worth saying. You took the collateral, he said, and turned into the bank. You handed it to me, Lena said. You just never bothered to look at what you were handing over. She reopened the shop. That surprised them. You own 3 syndicates paper, Rourke said, watching her sweep. You could buy a country. I like fixing things, Lena said. Countries don't hold still. They came anyway. All 3 of them. It was ridiculous. Tae-sung brought her coffee. She hadn't asked for and stayed too long. Rourke sat on the counter and broke things, so she'd have a reason to talk to him. Silas came on Sundays and never explained why. She didn't choose. They didn't make her. You know what you are now, Rourke asked her one night, in the warm brass light of the shop that had started all of it. Lena held her grandfather's pocket watch up to the lamp, repaired, running, keeping perfect time at last. I'm the watchmaker, she said, and in a city that had priced her, traded her, and handed her over like a thing. Every clock now ran on her time. So tell me, did Lena take the crown, or did she just take back what was stolen? Which one of them was your favorite? Tae-sung, Rourke, or Silas? Drop his name in the comments and I'll count them. And if that last line got you, type, she's the watchmaker, so I know. Share this with someone who loves a woman, who wins by outthinking the room. And subscribe, because next week's story is about a girl who cleaned the Mafia boss's office for a year and never spoke a word until the night she wrote one sentence on his desk and vanished. We'll see you there.